You're about to see something nobody's laid eyes on in over 60 years. Behind rusted doors locked tight by the ocean itself, a piece of history sits frozen in time. But what we found inside isn't just about wealth or glamour, it's about silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any words ever could. Picture this. July 25th, 1956. The Andrea Doria was the most beautiful ship on the Atlantic. Italian craftsmanship at its finest. Marble staircases, crystal chandeliers, first-class cabins that looked like something out of a palace. People called her the floating art gallery. She carried movie stars, business tycoons, families chasing the American dream. Everyone dressed in their Sunday best, even on a Tuesday. Women wore gloves to dinner. Men wore suits just to walk the deck. This wasn't just a ship. This was a statement, a promise that you'd made it, that you belonged to something extraordinary. But on that foggy night off the coast of Nantucket, everything changed. Another ship, the Stockholm, came out of nowhere. The collision tore a gash so deep into the Andrea Doria's side that water rushed in like a broken dam. 11 hours later, she sank. 46 people never made it off. The rest escaped, but they left everything behind. Their clothes, their jewelry, their letters, their dreams. All of it went down with the ship, settling on the ocean floor 240 feet below the surface. And there it stayed. Untouched. Forgotten by most. But not by everyone. For decades, divers have been drawn to the Andrea Doria like moths to a flame. They call her the Mount Everest of diving. Dangerous, dark, deadly. The currents are strong enough to pull you away. The visibility is terrible. You can barely see your own hand in front of your face. The cold cuts through your wetsuit like a knife. And the ship herself is falling apart, rusting away, piece by piece, year by year. More than a dozen divers have died trying to explore her, but still they keep coming back. Because somewhere in those dark hallways, in those locked rooms, the past is still alive, still waiting. Now, imagine floating through that darkness. Your dive light cuts a narrow beam through the gloom. Particles drift past your mask like snow. The walls are covered in rust and silt, and something that looks almost like fur but isn't. It's marine growth. Decades of it. The hallway stretches ahead of you, lined with doors on both sides. These were the first-class cabins. The rooms where the wealthiest passengers slept. Where they kept their most precious belongings. And one by one, those doors have been opened over the years. But there are still some that haven't been touched. Still some closets that remain sealed. Today, one of those closets finally gives way. The diver reaches out. His gloved hand grips the handle. It's covered in corrosion, but underneath you can still see the brass, still see the craftsmanship. He pulls. Nothing. He pulls harder. And then, with a sound that bubbles up through the water, the latch breaks free. The door swings open slowly, like it's taking a breath after holding it in for 68 years. Inside, the closet is small, maybe 3 feet wide, but it's perfectly intact, and hanging there exactly as they were left are clothes. Real clothes. A woman's coat, deep burgundy, or at least it used to be. The ocean has faded it, but the shape is still there. The stitching still holds. Below it, a dress with pleats. The kind women wore to cocktail parties. The kind that twirled when you spun around. And on the floor of the closet, a pair of heels. Not knocked over. Not scattered. Perfectly aligned, side by side, like she'd just stepped out of them and planned to step right back in. The diver moves his light slowly across the space. On a small shelf, there's a handbag. Leather. Clasp still closed. He doesn't open it. That's not why he's here. He's here to witness, to document, to remember. Next to the handbag, a bottle. Perfume, maybe. The label is gone, but the glass is still clear, still sealed. If you opened it now, would it still smell the same? Would it still carry the scent of 1956? Of a woman getting ready for dinner? Of hope? There's something about seeing these things that hits differently than seeing gold or silver. Treasure hunters have pulled coins and china from the Andrea Doria. They've taken chandeliers and even the ship's bell. But this? This is personal. This belonged to someone. Someone with a name. Someone with a story. Someone who packed this coat thinking they'd wear it again in New York. Someone who lined up those shoes thinking they'd walk down Fifth Avenue or maybe stroll through Central Park. Who was she? We'll probably never know. Passenger manifests tell us names, but they don't tell us souls. Was she traveling alone? Was she meeting someone in America? Was this her first time crossing the ocean, or had she done it a dozen times before? Did she make it out alive, or is she one of the 46? The diver reaches toward the back of the closet. There's a small drawer built into the wall. He pulls it open gently. Inside, folded carefully, is a scarf. Silk, by the look of it. And tucked beneath the scarf, something else. Paper. He lifts it carefully. It's an envelope, the kind you'd use for a letter. There's writing on the front, but the ink has blurred. You can make out a few letters. Maybe an M, maybe an A. But the rest is lost to time and salt water. He doesn't open the envelope. Some things are meant to stay sealed. Some words were meant for someone specific, and that someone isn't him. But you can't help but wonder. Was it a love letter? A goodbye? A confession? A promise that never got kept? The fact that it's still here means it was never sent, never read. The person who wrote it went down with the ship, or they escaped and never came back for it. Either way, those words have been waiting in the dark for almost 7 decades, and maybe that's where they're supposed to stay. But here's what gets you. It's not just one closet, it's not just one story. Every room on that ship holds a version of this. Every drawer, every suitcase, every corner where someone tucked away something they thought they'd need later. A father's watch, a mother's pearls, a child's stuffed animal, a musician's sheet music, a businessman's contracts. All of it left behind in a rush, because when the ship started sinking, none of that mattered anymore. You didn't grab your jewelry. You grabbed your kids. You didn't worry about your coat. You worried about the lifeboat. And once you were safe, once you were on the rescue ship heading to New York, you didn't think about what you'd lost. You just thought about what you'd kept. Your life. The Andrea Doria wasn't just a ship. It was a floating city. A snapshot of the 50s, of post-war optimism, of people believing that the future was brighter than the past, that crossing the ocean in style meant something, that elegance mattered, that beauty mattered. And in a way it did. Because here we are, all these years later, still talking about it, still captivated by it, still diving down into the cold and the dark just to catch a glimpse of what once was. But there's a weight to it too, a sadness. Because all that beauty, all that craftsmanship, all those dreams, they're all sitting at the bottom of the ocean, rotting away. The ship is collapsing. The decks are caving in. In another 20 years, maybe less, there won't be anything left to explore. The Andrea Doria will be gone completely. And with her, all those stories, all those moments frozen in time, all those closets that never got opened. So what do we take from this? What's the point of looking at a coat that nobody will ever wear again? Or shoes that nobody will ever walk in? Or a letter that nobody will ever read? Maybe the point is this. It reminds us that nothing lasts forever. Not ships, not buildings, not even memories. But while it's here, while we can still see it, we have a responsibility to look, to really look, not just at the objects, but at what they represent. The lives lived, the choices made, the love felt, the fear experienced, the hope carried. That woman who owned those shoes, she was real. She laughed, she cried, she worried about things we'll never know. She had people who loved her, maybe she had people who hurt her. She made plans, she dreamed dreams. And on one terrible night, all of that changed in an instant. The ship tilted, the lights went out, the water rose, and she had to decide what mattered most. And whatever she decided, it wasn't the coat, it wasn't the shoes, it wasn't the letter. But those things are still there, still waiting. And in a strange way, they're a kind of memorial. Not just to her, but to everyone who was on that ship. To the 46 who didn't make it. To the more than 1,600 who did. To the crew who fought to keep the ship afloat as long as possible so people could escape. To the captain who went down with his vessel. To the rescue ships that came rushing through the fog. To all of it. The closets of the Andrea Doria weren't just storage spaces, they were time capsules. And now, one by one, they're being opened. Not to steal, not to profit, but to witness, to remember, to make sure that the people who sailed on that beautiful ship aren't forgotten. That their stories, even if we don't know all the details, are honored. Because here's the truth. We're all packing our own closets right now. We're all holding on to things we think matter, things we think we'll need, things we think define us. And maybe some of them do. But when the moment comes, when life throws something at us we didn't see coming, we realize pretty quickly what actually matters. And it's never the stuff. It's never the things. It's the people. It's the moments. It's the love. The Andrea Doria has been sitting on the ocean floor since 1956. She's been slowly falling apart, piece by piece, room by room. But she's also been preserving something. Not just artifacts, not just history, but a reminder, a whisper from the past that says, this is what we were, this is how we lived, this is what we valued, and this is what we lost. And maybe, just maybe, by opening those closets, by shining a light into those dark corners, we're giving those people one last gift. We're saying, you're not forgotten. Your story still matters. Your life still counts. Even now. Even here. Even at the bottom of the sea. The diver closes the closet door gently. He takes one last look around the cabin. His light sweeps across the walls, across the floor, across the ceiling. And then he turns. He swims back through the hallway, back past the other doors, back toward the light above. And as he ascends, leaving the Andrea Doria behind once more, the closet settles back into darkness, back into silence, back into waiting. But it's not the same silence as before. Because now, someone has seen, someone has witnessed, someone has remembered, and that changes everything. This story, these images, these interpretations, they're crafted with purpose. To honor what was lost, to reflect on what remains, to remind us that behind every object, there's a human being. Behind every closet, there's a choice. Behind every silence, there's a scream. The Andrea Doria may be gone, but her story lives on. In the divers who risk everything to see her. In the families who still remember. In the historians who study her. And in moments like this, when we pause, when we look, when we feel the weight of time and loss and memory all at once. So the next time you open your own closet, think about what's really in there. Not just clothes or shoes or letters, but pieces of yourself, pieces of your story, and ask yourself, if it all disappeared tomorrow, what would you want people to remember? What would you want them to find? What would you want them to know? Because in the end, that's what the Andrea Doria teaches us. That life is fragile, that time is short, that beauty fades. But that stories, real human stories, they have a way of surviving. Even in the darkest depths, even in the coldest waters, even 68 years later, the closets have been opened, the silence has been broken, and the memory lives on.